Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube, wherever you may be, however you may be listening, live and in living color on this Wednesday evening. If you're coming to hear about the election results and some takes on who's losing seats, who's gaining seats, you won't find it here. We got two movies I'm way more excited to talk about than anything political related, and that is the most I want to say about the election. Hopefully we're a nice little deviation from all the noise for you today. We come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time, and we are down a member today. Joe decided to go have fun tonight. Joe decided to go have fun and do some gallivanting in the form of a Paramore concert neither of us were invited to. So got a bone to pick with him. Nah, he's probably having a great time. I can't wait to hear about it next week, truthfully.
Yeah, for sure, because that's one of the big ones is Paramore for our generation. One of the defining, probably up there with Blink, and then for that whole emo / pop punk genre, that's probably what. And then of course MCR, Chemical Romance.
No doubt, they probably put on a pretty good show too. Paramore, I would think.
Oh yeah, 100%. Oh, well,
I would. Yeah. Have you seen them live?
I have not seen them, but I've heard stories of them absolutely crushing live. And just Haley Williams overall just always gives 110% from the concert videos I've seen.
Sure.
It's, they don't half-ass it, and they don't, fall back on tech. Not that there's anything wrong with using extensive stage tech, but it's like, the rawness is still there, at least from what I've seen in the past few years.
That's cool. We'll cease talking about emo music right now or like pop punk because I don't want to get a cease and desist from the Emo Social podcast. I do not want to do that. I don't want to step on our good friend Lizzie's toes by any means. But anyway, we are got a lot of stuff to talk about today. A lot of cool stuff. Including two movies I'm really excited to hear what you think. I think I'm even more excited to talk about the first one, truthfully, which is stunning to me. But later on in the show, we're going to review Weird, the Al Yankovic story, which Joe is probably quietly mad he can't ream my ass for not giving this thing 4 stars and saying it's the best comedy of the year.
He messaged us saying, guys, I think the Weird Al movie might be perfect, which I did not follow up on because I don't know if he meant like, it's perfect as in instant 4 stars or perfect as in, it's perfect for a Weird Al. And then the implication is that there are some things wrong with it or there's some things that maybe turn it off. So we don't know and we won't find out.
And people don't need to treat me like, man, I got some mail from that review. People treat me like I called this thing one of the worst movies of the year. Like I went Dear Evan Hansen. I went Dear Al Yankovic on this thing. That's not the case. It's not the case at all. But we will talk about that. And we're going to discuss Tar as well, which, God, I'm excited to talk about this movie. The only other person that I know who has seen it, at least in my social circle, absolutely hated it, reviled it. Called it one of the worst movies of the year, and if he wasn't so damn likable and just such a damn good confidant, he would not be my best friend. But we'll jump in right now. Or actually, you know what? I just reminded myself, though. I do want to say a few words about this beforehand. I didn't make a note for myself. I should have. And I forewarned you, Dom, that I was going to do this. But man, oh shove. I was not done remembering the late great Takeoff of the rap group Migos. And then I come out of Tar. This is a connected story. I come out of Tar on Saturday afternoon. And Tar, we can attest, is a long-ass movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's 2.5 hours. I come out. I turn my phone back on, walking out of the theater. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm walking out of the theater, and I'm in the lobby. And I go, fucking Aaron Carter died?
No, I don't mean to laugh. Rest in peace. But yeah.
Aaron Carter died. I'm still kind of in shock. I mean, 34 years old, Aaron Carter, brother of Nick Carter, of the Backstreet Boys. And I'm not going to go too long-winded on this guy. I didn't have posters of the guy in my room growing up, but I want to say this anecdote about Aaron Carter, though. I don't know what it was. I go down rabbit holes a lot, as Dom knows, as Joe knows. I go down rabbit holes a lot. And I remember freshman year of college, I don't even know what the hell prompted me to do it. I don't know if I heard a song, if I was just messing around on Rate Your Music, that website, which I'm always on. I don't know what I was doing, but I somehow got like the urge to check out Aaron Carter's music. And I went on eBay and I bought all four. At the time, he only had four, all four of his CDs for like $7. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to listen to Aaron Carter. So I kid you not, my first week of college, like the first 2 weeks of college, going back and forth to school, bumping Aaron Carter discs, partying like it was 1999 over here, partying like it was 2001. And I went and listened to all four of his albums, which I can shamefully still name: Aaron Carter, Aaron's Party, Oh Aaron, and Another Earthquake. I can still shamelessly name those off the top of my head. And you know what? The first album isn't good, but the rest of them are pretty damn impressive for that brand of like teen pop, real almost like frothy, style of like boy band but missing the band type of music. I liked it. I honestly enjoyed it. I have a few Aaron Carter songs still in my rotation on my phone that I do enjoy listening to, namely Oh Aaron and Saturday Night. So I've always liked Aaron Carter. I've always kind of sympathize with him recently. He's been pretty open about his struggles with mental illness, which a lot of it I'm not going to get into, and his conflict with his brother Nick. I think the thing that saddened me the most and why I took this whole thing so hard was that, like, tangentially following him and his brother sort of going back and forth for the last couple of years. They hadn't spoken in 4 years.
Oh,
and now
sad.
he's dead.
That's really sad. That sucks.
They hadn't spoken in 4 years, and I didn't know until I looked it up. I'm like, please tell me they made amends, and they never did. And I also didn't know that Aaron and Nick's sister died 10 years ago. I didn't. So now it's just Nick. Now it's just Nick of that like Carter lineage. So I mean, that makes it all the more sad. The circumstances of his death are disconcerting, to say the least. I don't think the autopsy is going to prove that this was an accident by any means, or this proves that this was just, what do they always say, of natural causes. That was a term I couldn't think of. Unfortunately, but I wanted to say something because I do like Aaron Carter. I went back, actually, and this is how the rabbit hole I got down this week. I went back and watched him on like the Kids' Choice Awards, and I think I liked him because like even growing up, like he kind of looked like the better looking popular version of me, like with that like bleach blonde hair, that like that like cute smile and everything. I don't know. I've always kind of had an affinity for Aaron Carter. I've always thought he was talented, and I just think it really sucks that not only did he have to go through all that in life, but fame is so hard on these young stars, especially these young pop sensations too. And then you got a 10-year older brother who's a member of the biggest band in the universe at the time. That's not easy. So like, he's at peace now, but man, that kid lived a rough life even into his later years. And it just hit me on Saturday when I came out of the movie and was like riding high off a tar. And then it's like, God, Aaron Carter died. So I wanted to say something about that, though. I don't know if you bump Aaron's Party or That's How I Beat Shaq, but I wanted to say something about Aaron Carter.
I actually do have a friend who goes to the city a lot, and he ran into, I think, Aaron Carter. Yeah, I forget it was Nick or Aaron Carter, but he literally sent me a screenshot going, bumped into Aaron Carter. My life is complete. Was, and he's like,
how long ago was this?
He's a semi-stan. Pardon, say again?
How long ago was this?
This was like a couple years ago. Oh, well, probably 2019, I want to say, pre-pandemic.
Sure. That checks out because he released an album in 2018.
Oh, sure. Okay.
That checks out.
But really all I had to say was that the 2010s, late 90s, 2010s, that era of pop stars was just brutal. I mean, being a pop star in general, you just sign up for like a legitimately worse a quality of life, on average. But like, there's something, probably because we grew up in that time, but like something specifically about that time seemed extra harsh. I don't know why. Probably because there was a lot of coverage about it with Britney, the Carters. The list goes on and it escapes me, but some of them come out all right. Some of them not so much, and some are still a work in progress. So yeah, rest in peace. And it always sucks to see someone go out on a sad.
I don't want to draw more attention to it.
Right.
I'm not going to say anything more, but I'm just going to say that some of the headlines coming out of TMZ and everything in the circumstance, you can look them up if you desire. But I mean, it's not been very positive in terms of the circumstances of this whole thing. But we'll move forward. I just want to say rest in peace, Aaron Carter, because I am a fan of his music and I still own all four of those CDs that I bought that got me through the first 2 weeks of North Central very happily. But moreover, though, we'll segue to talk about something completely different, a totally different genre of music focused on in this movie. And I didn't really think about it until like a couple days ago, Dom, actually. I was like, man, I think Dom might have quite a bit to say about this movie, too. He knows
I do.
classical music better than I do and stuff. I know jazz is really one of your, get you out of bed in the morning. That's one of your passions in life. But I'm excited to talk this movie, Tar, because I love this movie, and it's so hard for me to describe to people why I love this movie.
Isn't it? It's so difficult. I actually I told my friends, one of my friends, actually the same guy, that saw Aaron Carter, funny enough, I was like, I came out of the theater, like literally out of the theater, I texted him and goes, man, you got to watch this movie, Tar. And he's like, I have heard nothing about it. What's it about? It's like, oh yeah, how do I describe it to him? It's
no
like,
kidding, right?
Yeah. And then I wound up kind of sneakily. I said, it's the harrowing story of a gay conductor trying to keep her concert together, which is technically correct.
That's not wrong. You're not wrong. There's no false advertising there. I first things first, just contextualize this because I think there's a large part of the population that has not heard of this movie. Cate Blanchett's in it. It's directed by Todd Field. Todd Field, this is his first movie that he's worked on in 16 years. And I mean first movie, period. The guy hasn't produced anything, written anything. He's quit acting since like the early 2000s. This is his first movie in 16 years. His last movie was Little Children in 2006, and he was also responsible for In the Bedroom back in 2001 with Sissy Spacek. Tar, though, is probably up there with the Banshees of Inisherin. There was another movie, I can't think of the name of it, that's up there. Tar is up there, though, I would say at least the top 10 most acclaimed movies of the year.
Yeah.
In terms of critical reception. It has gotten rave reviews. I truthfully think it's the front runner for Best Picture at this moment in time.
And actress.
I think it's and actress. I think if Cate Blanchett doesn't win it, I don't know who is at this point. But I think this movie has a chance to clean house at the Oscars. I truly do, for whatever that's worth. Having said that, though, the critical reception has been sterling. The audience reception, understandably, has been very mixed and polarized.
I expected that. Like 10 minutes into this, not to cut your train, but 10 minutes into this movie, I was like, oh, this is gonna be polars, complete polars, because it literally opens with like a literal like 5 minute, which is a lot of time in movie time, 5 minute New Yorker interview, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, no wonder the critics love this.
It opens with, before even that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Low key, I love that scene, but like that whole
scene.
It's not even a scene; it's a sequence.
Yeah.
At that point, not only that, I love like this movie's gonna piss people off immediately because it opens with credits, which are called acknowledgments, mind you, and they're shown backwards leading up to the producers and then Todd Field. And they don't show the cast either. They don't show the cast until the very end.
Very smart.
And I thought that was smart, and there's a reason for it.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm going to defeat that argument. I don't know. I was like, they waste our time for the first actual 5 minutes with these opening credits. I'm like, bro, like every movie since before the 60s did that. So get used to it. Literally, I think Star Wars was the first one, or at least one of the first to do that. And he got into a big, George Lucas got into a big fight with the unions over putting the credits at the end.
You watch any pre-60 movies? Like, I love Clark Gable movies. There's a period of time I was watching a Clark Gable movie a week. The first 5 minutes are devoted to credits.
Yeah, 100%.
The first 5 minutes are devoted to credits.
This is not new. But anyway, continue.
With my friend, though, me and my friend, we're gonna go back and forth on this. He saw this movie like a week and a half before I did, and he was like, "I hated it. I don't know how anybody can like it. It's joyless, whatever." So then I saw it, and I texted him. The first thing I texted him was, I said, "Loved it. could totally see why you or anybody else would hate it. And he was, I think he was kind of disappointed because he's like, I wanted to argue with you about it. And I said, no, it's not one of those movies that, like, if somebody tells me they saw it and hated it, I'm be like, I can see it. I understand
What? Why
it.
did they say that they hated it? What were like some of the reasons?
He said, well, I mean, in a lot of ways too. I mean, it's not his name ain't the title of the show at the end of the day. But I mean, what he said though, no, what he basically said though is he said that it doesn't really develop character relationships. We never really get a clear picture on what exactly Lydia Tarr did. And it's sort of, the movie sort of just plods in that regard, in that it spends a lot of time on nothing, and it's very subtle in that way. And I get it. I totally
I
get
get it, but
why anybody would hate it.
I would leverage that and saying that's the trick that the directors, not the trick, but like that is a concerted strategy. So at the very least, if you disagree with that strategy, that's fine. But it's not due to any kind of amateurish take on it. But in any case, I'm not here to argue with your friend, who's very valid take. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
No, the only thing I'll add to, just in sort of opening remarks, though, is, again, I can totally see why anybody would think this is a chore to get through. And I'm not going to lie, it was a patience tester for me at times too, especially in the second act. But there is so much here that I think is finely crafted. It's almost like it's an orchestra in its own right. The shots, the blocking, the cinematography, the very austere look of this movie. And the other thing, and I love movies that do this, even if I don't quite understand them to the fullest degree. I love movies, and the Nicolas Cage movie Pig is kind of similar in this regard, where it just takes you into a very specific world, drops you in it, no real introduction, swim. And that's kind of what this movie does. Because in the first, like you said, in the first real 5 minutes of the movie during that New Yorker festival, they're going through her resume. The interviewer's going through Lydia Tarr, played by Cate Blanchett, this famous conductor's resume. And they're referencing all sorts of conductor names that most of the audience probably hasn't heard of. A lot of symphonies, a lot of like intricate details about the art of conducting. And I'm not going to lie, I don't think I knew a single person they name dropped in this, but I was leaning forward in the beginning. I'm like, you know what? This is just really fascinating here. And like, I kind of like being in this world where like everybody has everything and everybody's miserable.
Yeah, I think
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, The misery is the best part, the most entertaining part, I should say, because it's like amidst all this wealth, pomp, circumstance, privilege, amazing status, like tens of thousands of artists would commit murder to be in one of the chairs in that orchestra. But they're all, and even though they're on that orchestra, some of them first chairs, some of them concert master, like the wife. And it's like, dude, they're all still miserable. And isn't that just art for you? Isn't that just art and artistry for you? But yeah, dude, I think amongst the three of us, I think it's safe to say I am the closest to this world, you, me, and Joe. But yeah, and not that I'm
definitely
remotely close at all, just relatively speaking, amongst the three of us.
Knowledgeable.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, like North Central College in Naperville, did you notice that Wentz Concert Hall looks just like, or very, very similar to the concert hall in the movie?
I noticed that. Yeah, I did take note of that. I'm like, man, this looks like Wentz right here.
There's a reason for that. There is a shared architecture, and there's a shared general, strategies on how to approach, a symphony hall. But all that aside, it's scary accurate. There's even a scene towards the first third of the movie, first quarter of the movie, where they're doing a master class, and I've been in some music-based master classes before, and they are that intense, particularly when the person giving the master class is very up there and a little full of themselves. There's a lot of ego that drives this movie, obviously from Blanchett's character Tar, but in every character, no doubt. Oh my God, the stuffy old people eating, expensive New York, but still tiny meals is ridiculous here. But you're right, Steve. It is absolutely fascinating, and even though. I knew probably at most like 20% of the names dropped very casually in this film.
It goes deep, man.
It goes real deep. I'm like, even I know that's a deep, deep, deep cut. And yeah, dude. But even in that sense, it didn't lose. I'm glad it didn't lose either of us. And I can also see how your friend can be very much turned off by. Let's be honest. This is a very coastal elitist, rich ass bougie world where it's like, bro. Especially with the midterms just happening as we're watching this, just about to happen while we're watching. No, we literally watched it yesterday during the midterms, in the middle of the midterms, and it's like, yeah, I can still see how you can not be engaged with this, and yet
this is gonna win best this is gonna win best picture, and
this is the La La
it's gonna
Land,
be one,
kind of thing.
This is gonna win best picture, and this is gonna be like one of the by general audiences. And when I say general audiences, I'm not talking like even the people that use like Letterboxd. I'm talking like general moviegoers. It's gonna be one of the most maligned fucking best picture winners in years.
This is the East Coast La La Land. This is. Am I wrong?
Yes.
Am I wrong? That West Coast rap. West Coast rap, it's real casual. They're all they like to go with the flow. But the East Coast mother effers, they go hard. East Coast goes hard. And bro, the color palette is cold as ice.
It's austere as hell.
Cate Blanchett, lover, a generational talent. She's also one of the physically speaking, one of the brightest skinned people working in the business, not an insult, just physically making that notice. And it's like, bro, the way they color her blue and gray in this movie just makes it colder. She looks downright lizard in this movie.
She looks like she's a mom in this movie too. She looks like she wouldn't say she wouldn't be the mom to say, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed in you. She would take it a step further and say, I'm not mad, I'm disgusted with you. That's what she looks like. Repulsed. I'm sickened by you. She always plays this type of character.
Oh, 100%.
So it's like redundant almost to say that this is a tour de force performance. I said in my review, StevePulaski.com, I said in my review that she's had probably 4 or 5 tour de force performances. And this is another one. And this is another one of hers that's just knocks it out of the park. And she's only made that much more physically imposing by the color palette of this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. And at the core of this movie, at the core of this story, is the story of a character's kind of drunkenness with power, and they're able to maintain that drunkenness very well, right? They're not stumbling about, they're not being sloppy. They're very moderately drunk in that sense, not overboard, but they are drunk with that power. We still have a Zoom sponsored intermission, but we have plenty of minutes to go. And to see where that power takes them, you could easily say that by the time the movie starts, we're already past their time is up if you follow the chain of events, more or less. But still, where this story goes, it is fascinating. I don't want to say roller coaster ride. That's obviously, that means ups and downs. But it is just a bullet train of just sheer, obviously the acting power, the raw acting prowess of Cate Blanchett will forever be stated. In fact, I'm even not going to say that ever again in this review, just because that's a base foundational feature of this movie. But still, how Todd Field manages to keep that momentum going despite a seemingly boring, a seemingly dead world, a seemingly depressing cast of characters, but the tension is still there, the drive is still there, and how they do it with the long, painful in an engaging way, not painful in that I'm bored, but just the painful long shots here. They're like small mini oneers, one takes, not like masturbatory one takes, like a Rope or something, like Hitchcock or anything like that, or like a Children of Men kind of situation. You throw in a movie with a New Yorker article and suddenly the film guy here is dropping films. But in any case,
these references,
yeah, exactly. But even though they're shorter but still one shots, and they are tantalizing to me. Even though there's not a lot of action, no action sequences are happening here. There's like one physical fight maybe, but like it lasts for a blip. But like and everything else, it's just the characters driving everything forward through sheer force of will, force of acting collectively, and a tension, underlying tension that is haunting not only this movie but the character.
Yeah, and like I said, it's really hard to get into this thing without diving into spoilers,
Yeah.
and the line of where the spoilers are is tough.
It is.
to
Oh
to,
my
to,
god.
to distinguish. What I will say though is the circumvention of this movie in structure is, to employ a word Dom used on the group chat last night, guffawing. In the way that it comes around that ending. And the thing is, if you just say the ending, like if we were to just describe the plot to you and then tell you how it ends, you'd be like, you'd be lost.
Oh, you say that's stupid. If I described it, you'd be like, that's stupid.
But after 2.5 hours of this whole thing and getting to spend like, Tar is almost in every shot of this thing, Lydia Tar. You spend so much time with her, and that's the final act for her. And the way it like interrupts it, and the way it cuts off too at the end, like you're just left with that. And it's one of the most damning endings I've seen in a long 100%. Time.
It's not even like what.
And I loved it.
What objectively happens to the character in their world? It's not even that bad. I mean, it's bad, but like what happens before that. But like they don't. Well, I guess I shouldn't spoil, but like. You know, it's not like they burn alive in a pit of hell for all eternity. No, it's not that bad, but like just the impact of it. When I said guffaw, I was referring to the ending. I'm like, that ending hit me, that as soon as I realized where this ending was going in the last like minute, I visibly, in the theater full of 3 people, that includes me, and the other two were not together. Yeah, exactly. I was like, this was literally me. It's like,
I think I probably made the same noise. I think I probably made the same noise. Just wild. And the one scene that I think will get replay value is the scene early in the movie when Lydia's teaching a class, because she's also a part-time professor at Juilliard, because of course she is.
This scene is going to be taken out of context by everyone.
Everybody's going to take this out of context. This scene when she puts the spotlight on
all sides of the
young
argument,
man,
completely.
On a young man addressing like cancel culture, because Tar is in a lot of ways too about the impact of one's consequences and how it impacts an artist and how an artist is viewed. Or as one of my favorite Letterboxd reviews of this movie says, it's all about separating the tar from the tartist.
Shut the hell up.
That's one of my favorites. But that's and like the scene because it all starts with this student, this person of color, who says that he doesn't respect Bach or doesn't have any interest in the composer Bach because of misdeeds in his life. What those misdeeds are, I don't know. I barely know anything about.
So real quick, not that I'm an expert, but he fathered a lot of children out of wedlock and was not particularly great to the women in his life. Let's just leave it at that. In addition to that, there's the actual we all agree he totally did that. On top of that, he is the buzzwords come in: white, cisgendered, et cetera, et cetera. So there's 2 angles to it. And dude, I loved the scene, but I also hated the implications it was going to have in the wider discourse, I'm sure.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with that. And that's fair. I was going to say, when you said the first half of your explanation there, I was going to say, so Bach was Nick Cannon's the modern day Bach then, huh? I wish we were still on radio. I wanted to get a note from John after that one. But anyway, but yeah, it does touch on cancel culture in this way. Now, Todd Field plays a really dangerous game here, and he navigates it so beautifully. This is one of the many reasons I love this movie, is that he invites a lot of modernity into a very contained yet epic character study. The pandemic's referenced, the lockdowns are referenced. Cancel culture is a theme that runs through this movie, as well as sort of social media conversations about gender and race and sexuality. They're all sort of mixed into this narrative. And man, that could have really imploded. That really could have set this movie off on a really bad, laughable course. But Todd Field, who wrote and directed this thing, he really incorporates these ideas into a narrative that's all about a person in Lydia Tarr who's never been challenged by anyone in life and has never really been like meaningfully challenged. She's challenged in that Juilliard classroom, but it's not her power's not threatened. She's a conductor at the end of the day. She's a control freak. It controls every aspect of her life. Did you take note in her Berlin flat with her wife and daughter that she has all of her stuff segregated to one side of the apartment? Like, work is her life and life is her work. And it's fascinating to me the way that Field incorporates a lot of those modern ideas into a story that is, for all intents and purposes, pretty timeless, but extremely timely now.
Yeah, 100%. In the remaining 2 minutes that we have here, I just wanted to jump off of that and say that so much of this movie relies on Blanchett, but there's so much going on around it, seemingly, that you really do not appreciate until it's over, until you realize, oh yeah, this is the world we were in, and this is the world we are now in as a result of that. And it feels like you're coming out of a roller coaster ride again, to try and use that cliche, force it in there. But yeah, dude, a lesser movie would have fixated on the cancel culture thing. But Todd Field here manages to make what is probably a good movie about cancel culture by just showing it, right? Not fixating on the debate, but just showing like what really goes on behind the scenes with power. Right? We are on the inside. We see so much of cancel culture, 60 seconds, so much of this cancel culture, blah, 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 all this debate happening on the outside, in the Twitter sphere, in the social media sphere, and we just hypothesize, implicate. But now we're on the other side of that situation. Where does that power, this story at its core about power, how does that play out, and how does that react to people? So in a way, he actually made a fascinating movie about cancel culture, if you will, indirectly.
We will take a short break. Zoom sponsored intermission coming back at you in about 60 to 90 seconds. Don't go anywhere. It's Sleepless with Steve. Back and better than ever, and we got company right here in the form of Siskel. Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube in the middle of discussing Tar, a movie I couldn't wait to chat with my boys about, at least one half of the boys over here, because this is a lofty movie, as I think we've kind of laid out here. as great as it is. We left off kind of talking about the cancel culture theme of this movie and and I think Dom, you said it very elegantly too. It doesn't get wrapped up in the debate. It just kind of shows it in action in a very realistic way, right down to like the board controlled meetings of it, or like
Oh yeah,
the
one hundred
PR.
percent, 100%. It's to the point where a lot of people are asking, "Is this a biopic?" But no, it's fictional. But
I was going to bring that up later.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, sorry, but it is a power dynamic, and the fallout of this thing, it feels very real, almost hyper realistic when you see the implication happening amongst the others. Steve, I don't know where you wanted to take it, but I did have one big point, but I don't know if you wanted to finish on the.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, potentially diverging here, but I did want to mention that this movie, is, in my opinion, get a little editorializing here, a very strong movie for LGBT and women and feminine kind of that aspect of life, that representation. Now, Kate Blanchett, not representation in that Kate Blanchett herself is gay. I believe she is straight, but still, the character, a gay character here that is portrayed in this way, it's not necessarily favorable, to say the least. But
No.
but seeing how this plays out, to the point where Tar, the fact that she is a lesbian, that the fact that she is gay, is incidental, and even though it is a strong and very, on display part of her life, it really has no bearing on the fact that she is a person with power. And in that way, it actually, in my opinion, this is a pro LGBT movie, in the sense that it is just showing someone, a gay person, being a human. Because what is more human than wrestling with power that you have, and potentially abusing that power as well. And in that sense, I applaud this movie for being representative of just the gay community, and also for just in general for women as well. It's an ugly picture, but it's a human one, and I think that ultimately is what defines those larger movements.
I completely agree. Todd Field's not virtue signaling here.
Oh, great point.
He's not just adding it in as a plot device either. He's actually being very human in his portrayal. Yeah, there's no tokenism here. That's a perfect word for it. And it's like, not all these types of characters have to be likable, but it is a role though where it's like she's never inhibited really by her sexuality. Mm-mm. Either, in terms of the power that she's been able to gain and grasp and hold on.
She wears it on her sleeve and her trousers.
Yes.
Quoting from the movie, her U-Haul lesbianism. Quoting her.
U-Haul lesbianism. I
quoting
love
the
that
character.
Term. That's funny as hell, the U-Haul lesbianism. No, I really like this movie too. And then it's kind of funny, and I'm not even going to attempt. Once she winds up getting some awards, I'll probably learn how to pronounce Hildor's name, the composer behind this movie too. There's some accents on her last name that I've never even seen before. She's an Icelandic composer, super talented. This whole movie, I'm sure you appreciated it a hell of a lot more than I did. The score is fantastic, and I keep trying to find. I don't know if anybody can lead me to it. It's pissing me off. I can't find the end credits song, the actual end credits song at the very end of the movie.
So I don't know. I didn't hear it, because as soon as the movie ended, I had to leave to go vote before I got to my polling place 30 minutes before the polls closed. So I just had to go. So I did not hear the ending credits. As soon as credits rolled,
I watched the whole thing. I watched the whole thing till the theater screen was black.
I wanted to.
I stayed the whole time. I love the final song, and it's like, and I thought, it's no big deal. I'll just go to the soundtrack. Well, the soundtrack, for those nerdy enough to even look into it, the soundtrack is like music from / inspired by.
Sure,
it's like one of those sort of soundtracks. That's number one.
Yeah, for a movie about classical
there's no
music.
fault of this. There's no fault of the soundtrack. Number two, it's made even more confusing because it's structured out of order from the movie. And number three, there's a lot of like snippet audio tracks in this thing that are like Hildur directing or Kate Blanchett responding or something like that.
Right.
There's like a lot of these like interludes too. I can't find this end credit song and it's pissing me off because I loved it. If I'd have known any better, if I'd have known it was going to be this big of a mission to find, I would have Shazammed the goddamn thing. But I love the end credit song of this movie. And again, like it's not like your typical movie, like where you could like list, like if you're finding a song you like, either Shazam it or like Google a line that you heard in it. It's like all, as you know, all classical music is like, you know, Beethoven's symphony in E minor double take 5. Like it's not intuitive to find songs of this nature.
When you get into a world of music where there's no words anymore, it blows your it like we have an addiction in the popular sphere. No hate, but look, we have an addiction to lyrics. We need someone saying words, and when you free yourself of that, no hate on pop, but when you free yourself of that, it's crazy. It's like, holy shit, they're speaking to me through the music. I don't know. I'm being
And it's beautiful. And it's beautiful. I'm just trying to find the damn song. So like, I'm gonna have to wind up waiting until it comes on streaming and I watch it again ahead of the Oscars.
Yeah.
No, I love this movie. And again, it's 2 hours and 38 minutes. It's in no rush in general to get to really anything. And I'm not gonna lie, it does become a little exhausting by the second act.
That's my
just by the very nature of its just construction.
Yeah,
It's exhausting.
that's my one big, and not even that big, but my biggest complaint would be that, in that it does feel a little lost in the weeds, and it's a complaint I'm gonna share with another movie we're gonna review about a legendary musical artist who takes the world by storm. But and it doesn't even get that lost. It doesn't get like completely lost. Just a momentary. Which hall am I in? Oh, okay. And it's almost in a movie where we have seen in our lifetime some hoity-toity, some like get the hell out of here movies. You know what I'm talking about? I can't name any. This is not one of those movies. It's actually a lot more straightforward than most people are probably going to perceive it, because it's about a classical music conductor in New York who gets interviewed by the New Yorker. It's actually much more straightforward, but even then it does get a little, these are going to be harsh words and I don't mean them, but like a little too much of itself. Maybe I don't
That's
even
totally
know.
fair.
It's a very subtle thing that I can't even pinpoint exactly, but I did feel it. So I'll say that. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't disagree there. And at times it can feel, this has been like my word to, if I nitpick it or like tell people, I've recommended it to a few coworkers. I said like it can feel and sometimes actually be impenetrable. Like it sometimes feels like that because there's a lot of scenes that are conducted in real time, no pun intended.
Right.
There's a lot of scenes that are in real time. There's a lot of scenes where sometimes there's no break. Like that New Yorker festival scene is like probably 6-7 uninterrupted minutes of just this panel. That gives you really great background into who Tar is and how accomplished she is.
If it
but
wasn't,
it is tiring in itself.
Oh yeah, if it wasn't the first scene, I would have thought it'd be too much. But because it's the first scene, smartly, it actually worked for me really, really well. This is coming from the guy who listens to NPR, so you know
exactly. You can't even say like you could say a lot of things about this movie. You can't say the titular character was underdeveloped.
Oh hell no! Oh,
I mean, like I said, I would forgive anybody who thought this is a biopic. I would forgive anybody who thought this was. And so I knew it wasn't going into it, but like, watching it, I'm like, oh, this totally feels real. It's I have no doubt that Todd Field modeled Lydia Tarr after probably a handful of conductors. I have no doubt that he took inspiration. He kind of made a salad of sorts of a character, a little bit here and a little bit there. But no, she comes across as lived in, and it's again another credit to Kate Blanchett, who gives a standout performance. Before I parlay into my review, I'll say this though: I can't wait to watch this thing again.
Oh yeah.
If my schedule wasn't as busy as it is, I would probably try and double back to the theater to see this again, to watch it again. And I'm kind of hoping that when this thing, I don't think it's I think when this thing probably gets 8 nominations for the Oscars this year. I mean, think of it this way. I think Todd Field directing, Todd Field writing, Kate Blanchett actress, Hilder for the score, Florian Hofmeister for cinematography. You're already at 6 right there. And then whatever sound editing they might tack on. I think this thing, I would set the over under at like 7.5 nominations for this thing at this point in time. I hope it gets a re-release when it does get when it does get nominations. I hope it gets a re-release. If not, I already scheduled it while you were talking a minute ago. I'm gonna watch this the week of the Oscars again.
That's a good move.
I can't wait to watch this thing again. I really can't, because even halfway through it, I knew there were so many visual details I'm missing. There's so many visual details that I'm not getting right on the first watch. I can't wait to watch it again. It's got a good chance to make my top 10 of the year. It's 3.5 out of 4 stars at this time, but I will say, like I did in my review, my written review, I might not be done writing about this movie. That's how much I think of it.
For me, 3.5. If I were to watch it again, it might go up to 4, or it might stay the same. But it's like that's how much I was engrossed by this movie. A powerful movie about a person very much wielding their power in a fascinating but very, very problematic way, to say the least. But again, Kate Blanchett, oh my God, when they write the books on her, when many, 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 many years from now, when she goes, just an incredible volume of work that cannot be overstated.
She's got 2 Academy Awards. I think she's bumping it up to 3 come March 12th. Mm-hmm. I really do. I think that she's got a good chance to win again for this thing, which is exciting and deserved at the end of the day 100%. Too. I think if she does, Mia Goth's got competition.
Yeah, that's an interesting lineup. That is an interesting lineup, and I can't give you an off the cuff remark there.
We will move forward with Sleepless with Steve, because we got another movie, a totally different movie to talk about today. These double headers are fun because it's usually polar opposite movies we have to tackle.
They are, they aren't.
In a way, yeah. This movie, I know Joe is pained that he cannot be here, and I would love for him to be here to talk about this thing. But it is Weird, the Al Yankovic Story, free to stream on the Roku channel. First time I ever saw it said that. It's interesting. If you have Roku, which I have a Roku TV. I was wondering, I'm like, am I going to have to download the Roku channel app? Like, how am I going to have to navigate it? Nope. The day before the thing dropped, there's a whole weird tab for the movie that has like all the behind the scenes content. I watched a lot of it. And I've been on kind of a Weird Al kick these last 2 weeks in anticipation of this movie. I was going back to a lot of his early videos and a lot of his stuff, which I would encourage you, Dom, and anybody to do so.
Weird Al is like potato chips. You have one, you're in for the whole goddamn bag. Bro, it's a marathon. It's a marathon, mini marathon whenever I stumble across any kind of music on him.
I've talked on this show and even in both of my reviews of Weird, the Al Yankovic Story and the original mockumentary from 1985, The Complete Al, which is a must-see. I talked about my love for Weird Al and how he was one of the first musical artists that like I found on my own outside of my parents. Like I found him on my own and dove deep into his discography. I'm not going to go there again, but I will say 2 things. One, I will prove to myself, I sent this to Joe. I didn't send this to you. I will prove that I am a diehard Weird Al fan. And I will add this too. First thing, the lesser thing, the song, one of the most brilliant Weird Al parodies. It's not even a parody. It's like a style parody.
Right.
It's called One More Minute. It's on the Dare to Be Stupid album. Have you heard it?
I have not heard it, but I do know he does those like Hardware Store. That's not a parody. Yes. That's just, it's like a hoedown. It's just a random ass hoedown.
One More Minute is a parody of like Elvis, Frankie Valli ballads.
Okay.
And like
I know
doo-wop.
exactly what that sounds like.
And it's a great song because it's called One More Minute. And the video is great too, because he's like, I would rather clean and the band in the back too is like doing the backing vocals, and they're just doing like doo up in the background. And he goes like, and he's a spin on love songs. He goes, I would rather clean all the bathrooms in Grand Central Station with my tongue than to spend 1 more minute with you.
Oh.
And it's fucking brilliant. And I hadn't heard that song in years. And I saw the video for it last week. And I was like, God, is this song great? The other thing I will prove to you that I'm one of the biggest Weird Al nerds to ever walk the earth. What is the opening line in this movie? It's heard on the radio when Daniel Radcliffe as Al is a young, or it's not Daniel Radcliffe at that point, but when Weird Al is young and listening to that radio under his cover as a Dr. Demento show, the opening line of the movie, and it comes from the radio, it's like, Gabardine suits are 30% off. No Life Me over here did the Leonardo DiCaprio point at the TV screen and said to nobody except for my two long-suffering cats over here. That's a reference to his parody of King of Pain by the Police called King of Suede.
Nice.
In King of Suede, he plays a fabric salesman who owns a fabric store. And the opening line of that song, there's a sale on our gabardine suits today. They're all 30% off from yesterday. Your boy knew that. And I bet you there's less than 10 people that caught that. I bet you there's less than 10 people that caught that because King of Suede is one of my favorite Al songs.
There are some Weird Al super stands out there. And you are one of them, for sure. But I think there's more than you might be letting on. But
I want to know how many people picked up on gabardine suits being 30% off. But anyway, though, this is the long-awaited adaptation of the Funny or Die sketch that came out, 12 years ago. Directed by the same man who directed the movie, Eric Apple.
Directed the sketch?
Yeah, he directed the sketch, too. Eric Apple directed the Funny or Die sketch in 2010. That had Aaron Paul. This one has a whacked-out, weird, unhinged performance by Daniel Radcliffe, which is the crowning jewel of this movie. Daniel Radcliffe is great. And the funny joke about this, too, like there's a couple things with Daniel Radcliffe playing Al that's funny in itself. Number one, he looks like him to a degree. You can tell there's a lot of costuming to make him look like Weird Al, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, I don't know if you know this, Weird Al is a tall drink of water. That guy's like 6'3", 6'4".
He's tall as shit.
He's huge. And it's hard because you see him in videos, doesn't do him justice. You look at him like standing next to fans. The guy is a giant. I saw him in concert, and I was like maybe 6 rows back. He's huge. He's a towering figure. And Daniel Radcliffe is probably my height, like 5'10", 5'11". You know, so that's kind of one of the jokes of this movie, too, is that, like, if you catch it, is like, man, he's definitely shorter than Al by several inches. But this movie is very much not to be taken seriously. This is a total satire, a parody movie. Probably one of the first parody movies we've gotten in a long, long time.
Yeah, man.
That is sort of an exaggerated, hyper-exaggerated, not only telling of Weird Al's life, but also the rock and roll biopic genre in general, which we have quite a few examples to go off of over the last several years: Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocket Man, and Elvis. However you feel about those three movies, and I feel some type of way about each, those three movies are drastically different from each other in ways to make a biopic. Elvis almost is sort of an amalgam between the two, but to a dialed up degree. Where Weird, on the other hand, is just like, again, like the kissing cousin to pop star Never Stop, Never Stopping. That's been the movie, the point of comparison I made even when the trailer dropped. I said this movie is going to be very much in that wheelhouse, and it absolutely is. What say you generally about Weird, the Al Yankovic story?
This, I actually did not know about the Funny or Die sketch, the original sketch way back when.
Oh, okay.
And I got a little nervous whenever I see Funny or Die pop up, just because their humor is, for me, hit or miss. Let me say this, in that it is either funny or it dies for me, in the true literal sense of that phrase, because I don't know, maybe there's something about the transitional period from 2000s to 2010s. Maybe it's maybe I just grew out of some of that humor. Some of it's timeless, don't get me wrong. Some of it, I feel like not so much, and I could go into why. I don't know. Maybe I was because I was more of an Adult Swim kind of guy. But not that this was, not adult humor, but regardless. I could probably write a dissertation on how I feel about that and still be wrong. But where this movie lands is that it plays it somewhat straight, and then it veers off into total insanity. There is a point where you don't even realize it, where it's like, oh, we're here now. We're doing this. I thought you were just going to play it subtle, but tongue in cheek, so not subtle. But then there's a point where it goes like full on Police Squad, like Police Squad 33 and a third, like the third one, and it's not. I'm not missing.
Are you thinking? Do you mean to say Naked Gun?
I'm sorry, you're correct.
Naked Gun.
I also love.
I didn't know if you were riffing on the show and adding the 33 and a third, but yeah, Naked Gun's if the movie you're thinking.
Yeah, Naked Gun, 33 and a third. Fun fact: the reason why they said 33 and a third, they were gonna make a joke. The tagline wasn't gonna be the final insult. It was gonna be something about referencing a record because it's 33 and a half, which is a RPM.
Oh, okay.
But then the executives were like, "Nah, no one's gonna get that," and then it ruined the joke. But anyway, and I also realized
just for the record. Thank
you. Yes, I so wish they kept it in. But it is that tangent is Weird Al related because Weird Al showed up, I think, in all three of those movies as a cameo. But anyway, this the Al Yankovic story is a fun ass time, and I found myself. Tongue in cheek, I think is a good way to describe it. With the occasional guffaw, I've fallen in love with the word guffaw is my word of the week, as you know. I have those moments. But yeah, dude, there are times where something happens in a specific way that it's like, God damn it, they're really doing it. It's a head shaking moment, puts a grin on your face, and you just go, huh. And it's a good time, and the 110% that every actor is giving on this movie is pure delight, and I'm so happy that it is. This is something I was nervous about it, honestly, because like I want this movie to do well. I want the story of this great and awesome performer, entertainer that is the actual Weird Al to do well and not die in like a cringe moment of they gave this a shot, but no, it wound up being a pretty damn fun time.
It is fun for a while, I would say. I would say for a while.
I think we're gonna have some differences here.
I think it's fun for a while. I really love the scene. There's so much into this. I had a hard time reviewing it, even in the regard of like trying to explain the bullshit plot of the whole thing, because like again, like. The one of the conflicts, and this was one of the things we talked about when the trailer first dropped. I said, what's the conflict in Weird Al's life? I think that's one of the reasons it's taken so long for a movie to materialize. Yeah. I said, like, only him. It's terrible. We started the show with Aaron Carter, who had a rough life. And then it's like the two musical acts I could think that never had a hard day or like never had a lasting conflict more than a couple months was probably Weird Al and the Statler brothers. Just in terms of like positive vibes for these guys. But my favorite scene of this thing involves Dr. Demento, played very valiantly by Rainn Wilson.
Oh yeah,
who
totally.
even looks like him in a weird way, is the pool party sequence.
Yeah.
The pool party sequence is a damn gem. It's got Jack Black playing the radio DJ, Wolfman Jack, Pee Wee Herman, Divine from the John Waters movies, Salvador Dali. I mean, it's a great
Conan
time
O'Brien is Andy Warhol.
That was a good one too. That was another good one. There's so many cool like little cameos in that. Dimitri Martin was Tiny Tim.
That's who was
Dimitri
Tiny
Martin.
Tim. I was wondering who the hell was Tiny Tim. That's right.
And the other thing to note there too, Akiva Schaffer, one half of Lonely Island, was Alice Cooper.
1/3 of Lonely Island.
1/3 of Lonely Island, excuse me. And another third of Lonely Island, Jorma Taccone, was Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow, that's pretty good.
I thought for a half a second, I thought that was Jorma Taccone. But I was like, nah, I don't know if it is. And then sure enough, it is. Kind of weird Andy Samberg didn't show up in this thing. Kind of weird in like one way
I
or
am
another.
too, because they're pulling once you bring out like Conan O'Brien and Jack Black, it's like, well, all hands are off. The cameos can fly here. For a second, I thought they got Elton John. Oh, sorry, they got Taron Egerton as Elton John back for a small cameo as like a joke within a joke. But I don't think there was no exploitive shot of showing that, so I don't think so.
No,
But
I wouldn't say that. I don't think that's the case.
in a lesser movie, that cameo scene would have been atrocious. It would have
Sure.
been so cringe. It would have been like, oh, this is where the movie's really gonna die for me, isn't it? But no, it actually holds through just through the raw plot of it all. But also, yes, the fact that it's like, I'm John Deacon. What? Bassist for bassist for Queen. Like,
Bassist for
yeah.
Queen.
Which is so true that no one knows that name.
I and here's the thing. This is where I get my complaint, and I'm in the minority on this. Fair
I think
enough,
I might even
especially
agree
being
with it.
a diehard Weird Al fan. This thing started to run out of steam for me a lot sooner than I anticipated, and it kind of happens with the introduction of Madonna, I think.
Okay.
To me, with Evan Rachel Wood. From there, and again, too, you can't. I really feel like my buddy called me out for it. It's been in my mind. I feel like Roger Ebert when he complained and when he criticized slasher movies for being too bloody. That's how I feel with it.
Unironically, did he do that?
He did it once or twice. He said, like, these movies are so gory and nasty and bloody. And then we were all like, Roger, that's the point. But and that's how I feel with this movie too. But like, I don't know. Once Madonna gets introduced, like, and I get it starting to abide by like rock biopic structure.
Mm-hmm.
Al becomes a drunk. He becomes a dick. And he starts becoming this like egotistical maniac. And like, I get the trope. I just didn't particularly enjoy it. And then when you introduce Pablo Escobar on top of it, and then when he's just wielding a machine gun in the jungle like he did in his own starring vehicle,
I was gonna say
this thing gets totally off the fucking rails for me.
But it didn't work for you. It didn't home run for you at the least.
It did not. I'm not going to say it didn't work. It ran out of gas in a way, and it became a little bit exhausting for me personally. Like, I don't know and that's the thing where I wrestle with it, and I've wrestled with myself like the last couple of days going into the show. Like, did I want this to be straightforward in some ways? Did I want it to be dialed down a little bit more grounded? And maybe some ways, yeah. I just almost think that, like, and this is a bold thing for as big of a Weird Al fan as I am also not crazy about UHF. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I'm not crazy about UHF. That was his first and only starring role in a movie in 1988. And that was basically like a sketch comedy type of a movie. I wasn't really wowed by that movie. Killer soundtrack to that thing. Great soundtrack. But I wasn't huge on that either. And it almost makes me think that, like, at least for my palate, Weird Al is best in 2 to 5 or sometimes 11-minute songs. Like these contained songs that have like a thesis and an approach and a goal and a parody subject in mind. That's where I kind of thought. I thought, like, man, 107 minutes of Weird Al and like is a lot. And I think that it's just his style of humor and his brand is better as a contained entity in a song. What would you say?
You know what? I don't disagree with you, but you know where it fell off for me actually a little bit? Didn't fall off as hard, but it fell off for me was just kind of I think it's before the Pablo Escobar scene. The fact that we call this movie as a Pablo Escobar scene,
with a straight face.
And before that, I think it's largely the lack of snappiness. It's a very peculiar thing. I know you're talking more chunkier in terms of like, oh, this whole sequence really didn't work as much for me as I thought it would. For me, it's more in the minutia of it. And this can feel nitpicky, but I promise that it is something foundational to the whole thing, where it's like just the hanging on a joke, and not just the individual jokes, but the wider jokes of like, hey, this is the part where he's drunk now, right? He's a wreck, and he breaks up with the band. I'm like, we get it, right? We have not only seen this biographical. We've not even seen this real life template play out. We have seen this biographic template play out at least 3 times in the past like 5 years, and plenty more before that. You could make an argument that Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story by
A lot of people comparing this movie to that.
yeah, exactly. I was really young and did not get all the jokes, obviously, when I first
I
saw
need to
that.
go back and watch Walk Hard, but I think I enjoyed Walk Hard more, if memory serves.
I might even be in the same vein. I might even be seeing the same vein because they get a little raunchier there too. Not that this movie doesn't get raunchy.
It wouldn't have felt right with a Weird Al movie getting raunchy because he himself isn't raunchy.
I agree. But still, there's something about the minutia of it that I can only. This might even be unfair, but I don't think so. It's something that I feel like is attributed to the Funny or Die strain of humor, right? And I'm not saying that because they stamped Funny or Die on it, then my brain turned off. No, I'm cognizant of that. But if a production company is behind this whole thing, obviously the DNA of that production company, it's like Illumination, right? When you see Illumination, you're going to get an Illumination movie. When you see a Disney movie, you're going to get a Disney movie.
And production companies' presence and logos, they make themselves some more than others very well known.
They do matter.
Well known on properties. They not only matter, but after a while, you expect a certain, like, a brand to develop, as you have with Illumination, as you have with Pixar, and some other ones.
And
too,
the brands,
name, but
100%. And the brands play into that as well. Because it's, that's your success. Why wouldn't you? It works for a lot of people. So I don't blame them for that. But for me, I think the humor started to pull back a little bit, largely on the sense that I think this is the type of humor where I don't want to say it. There's some good I'm obviously a little conflicted here. It's like, I feel like it could have used more slapstick and less referencing. Not referencing to pop culture things, referencing to the genre, right? So I'll go back to the Police Squad / Naked Gun, where it's like so much of at least that first movie. Yeah, there were a lot of pop culture references, but those are the worst parts of those movies now. The best parts of Naked Gun and Police Squad are just the timeless gags of when we freeze frame, we're going to freeze frame, but we're not actually going to freeze frame. And the world is still going on around us while music plays and we hold. And like, that's just funny, tirelessly funny. And then
references expire.
100%.
References expire. They have a shelf life, whereas style parodies don't. And I go back to a lot of like, and I mean, don't get me wrong, Eat It, Like a Surgeon, Amish Paradise. They're all great songs. Did you catch that little Coolio bit too during the Amish Paradise?
Yeah, where he's like pissed off. Yeah.
Like, and Al actually commented on that. I'm interrupting myself. Al actually commented on that. He was like, because it's like kind of an unfortunately ill-timed joke since Coolio just died.
Yeah.
He just died a couple months ago, but Weird Al said, he's like, I hope he would have loved it. He's like, it is awkward, but he's like, I hope he would have loved it.
It's in good jest. Weird Al has just so much good faith stored up. He's like a freaking armory of good faith stored up. I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be anything either. I just caught that joke and I laughed. But yeah, like, no, you're understandable though, because it's like, it's not the references that wind up holding water even too. It's like, it's just the fact that it's the style parodies and stuff like that, or like parodying certain gags. Like, I mean, Police Squad had one of the best, the TV show. The title card was Police Squad in color.
Yeah.
Like,
in
that alone
80s.
was a joke. That alone was great.
I've seen this happen in other mediums as well. But when you try to take revenge, be careful or take care to dig 2 graves, which is a strong phrase for this, what I'm about to say, which is that when you take aim, when you do like a parody genre, be careful that you don't wind up following that same formula itself and you fall into the exact same trap as it.
Looking at you, Kevin Smith.
Yeah, 100%. That's probably the more apt analogy. I'll even make this reference. No one's going to get it, but there was a video game called Matt Hazard, The Return of Matt Hazard, and it's a parody of Duke Nukem. Do you at least know that name?
I've played Duke Nukem games.
And I played I rented it. I played that game, and it's like, I get the references you're making, but in making the references, you just wind up being the same thing, and now I'm just playing that game, only worse. Did it make sense what I said? It's like, oh, you're making
Absolutely. No,
like, oh, you're
absolutely.
making fun of like bad shooting mechanics by making a bad shooting game. But now you've just made a bad shooting game and this isn't fun. Like, I'm not having a good time anymore.
I'm just briefly looking this up. I'm really stunned. I never heard of this game before.
It's very obscure.
This was in my area of gaming.
Will Arnett voiced the main character, and it's a good watch of a game, but it's not a great game. Anyway, that's a very deep cut, and it's probably too strong for this review because that wound up not being too good. This movie, Weird Al, actually did wind up being fun despite its shortcoming. It's one big shortcoming, but it cannot be denied. I'm just gonna transition to review in our final 4 minutes. It cannot be denied that this is a movie where all the actors are firing on all cylinders in the sense that they are just giving it 100%. Daniel Radcliffe is perfect. He doesn't have to be a lookalike. He just has to capture the essence of Weird Al, and he does so with aplomb. The fact that Weird Al is in this movie as another character, exacerbating himself, or rather, making fun of himself, is great. So much good spirits, so much good humor. If you even like Weird Al, Chelsea loves Weird Al. She wanted to watch this movie with me, and it's rare that she wants to watch a movie with me because of time.
We'll have to have a chat, her and I.
Yeah.
About Weird Al.
But ultimately, I got to give this a solid 3 out of 4 stars for the Yankovic story. Weird.
I look like the hater here. I give it 2.5 out of 4 stars.
I see what you're saying. I really do.
Yeah, it ran out of gas for me a little quicker than I would have liked. But having said that, though, I did watch most of this movie with a smile on my face. What I will add, though, too, and I probably did myself no favors with this, too, I watched the Complete Al before seeing this movie.
That probably
and the
didn't
Complete
help.
Al, if you have not watched it, which I know that probably most, I think outside of diehard Weird Al fans, it's a must watch. It's available for free on Tubi and Pluto TV. It's stellar.
Star rating for Complete Al.
3.5.
Wow. Okay.
That's a great one because it's actually Alan. It's a mockumentary. And the other thing that I liked about it, I'm not saying Weird should have done it, but the other thing I liked about the Complete Al a lot was that it interspliced some of his videos in between. And that was
for
like
that full
nice
effect,
little,
that documentary effect.
That was a nice elixir to it and everything. Yeah. Some really hilarious jokes, even some really, and these clips are a bitch to find now, some really hard to find clips now of Al TV with the old MTV show.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I think I have seen those clips, some of them.
The Al TV, not the Weird Al show, which is also, I think, still a bitch to find on DVD. Your boy owns it, though. Not the Weird Al show, not that. I'm talking Al TV, which he would do. These were like these hour-long specials he did on MTV in lieu of an album release. Really funny stuff. I used to watch a lot of that shit on YouTube.
It's like a VJ, like it's a video jockey.
It's kind of like a spoof of VJ. Yeah. Like it really is. Like there's a great clip of him like talking about the rock conspiracy that like all rock stars are like astronauts or something, and it's just a bit that he sells. And he's like, no, if you're gonna say I'm crazy, that the astronaut that rock music is a conspiracy from astronauts, then how come when you take a record and put a scoop of mashed potatoes on top of it, it looks like a saucer?
He really is cut from that mold. Dr. Demento, Wolfman Jack, he is from that mold. He's a transitional artist. Without him, the internet would not be where it is today in terms of humor, and we are so thankful for him.
Beyond thankful for Weird Al for shaping my love for music and my love for comedy, too. Won't argue against seeing Weird the Al Yankovic story. That's our story. Down to the final minute, went well into OT. Join us next week, Joe. We'll be back. We are reviewing Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever. Until then, for Dominic Guanzon doing a great job running the board, and yours truly, see you next week. This has been Sleepless with Steve.